All right, citizen comments are closed. Before we continue, I'm going to need a motion to adopt ordinance 23-07. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Shirley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Roberts. Vice Mayor Shirley, you have the floor.
I think our city attorney did a pretty good job explaining it. I have nothing more to add.
Any other questions or comments from the council?
Just a comment. I would like to commend Mr. Moore on this. We discussed this a lot during the last work session. And trust me, please, when I tell you that understanding and having this thing flow is not easy. And he did a fantastic job of tying everything together on these various ordinances. I went through it initially when we first started talking about this and went home and said, I think I'm just going to figure out how this is going to work. And after 17 tries, I finally decided I'm just going to let him worry about it. So he did a fabulous job on this. And I think the three people that actually come up with the 3 seats in 25 are myself and Vice Mayor's and Mr. Zabel's seat.
Yes,
But we're
that's
gonna come up in
correct. Yes,
25, but,
that's right. Thank you.
But yeah, so great job.
I second that. Any other questions or comments? No? All right, I'm going to just go ahead and spell it out for those of you that are not aware of it. We did, I actually did a survey of all of the municipalities in Pinellas County. And I come to find out, we were one of the smallest municipalities with the most members. We were compared with Largo. We were compared with St. Petersburg. It really just didn't make sense. Between that and also the fear that we would not have enough candidates in each election, this makes perfect sense. So now that I've spoken, would anyone else like to comment on this? No? All right, Patty, let's take it to a vote, please.
Councilmember Banker,
No.
Councilmember Livingstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro,
No.
Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Aye.
Mayor Gaddis.
Aye. So it passes 4-2. That is the first reading and it is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next ordinance on the agenda is ordinance number 23-08. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, submitting to the city electors a referendum question on the amendment of sections 2.02, 2.04, and 5.05 of the charter to increase the term of office for individual council members, including the mayor, from 3 years to 4 years, and to amend the regular election schedule to accommodate such terms, identifying the issue to appear on said ballot, providing for the adoption of ballot language by resolution, providing for publication in accordance with law, and providing for an effective date. This has been a reading of ordinance number 23-08 by title only. Just as I did with the previous one, I'll read the proposed ballot language that would accompany this. The title is increasing term of office from 3 years to 4 years. And the language is, shall the city amend the charter to provide that each individual term of office for city council members, including the mayor, shall be for 4 years as opposed to the existing 3-year term, beginning with the officials elected in 2024, and amend the regular election cycle to accommodate the longer election terms. So that's the ballot language. I do think it's worth looking at the precise language that's been added here. I'm not going to read it chapter and verse, but I will tell you this was the most involved of the proposed amendments for a few reasons. I think that your points were well taken during the work session, that if we move to a 4-year schedule, but stay on 4-year terms, but stay on the current election cycle, what would happen is we would have an election in March 2024. Those people would serve for 4 years. So they would serve till 2028 if this passed and was approved by the voters. And then the next cycle would be 2025 and go for 4 years. So they would serve till 2029. So if we didn't change anything, we would have an election in 2025, then nothing in 26, nothing in 27, and then again in 28, rapid fire, two new votes, 28, 29. And then again for these gaps. And so there was a concern articulated by the council, or at least by some members of the council during the work session, that we should keep those staggered terms. And so this ordinance accomplishes both changing the language from 3 years to 4-year terms, which is a simple amendment. You see that in 2.04, for example, for the mayor. But what it does is in 2.02 says that commencing with the 2024 election, if this passes at the 2024 election, whoever wins for the seats that are vacant, with the exception of the vacancy being filled for Mr. Zabel's seat, which we can address separately, but excuse me, the regular term seats that are up for election in 2024, if this passes, would serve until 2028. If it fails, they'll stay right on schedule for their 3-year term. So the voters are simultaneously electing who would serve and how long they'll serve for that term at the March election if this passes this council. And then again, the election cycle is altered so that we would go as suggested earlier, 2024. Then the positions that are scheduled to end in 2025 would move to 2026 whenever we have an election in 2026 again, because I couldn't presume that the ballot measure for November versus March elections would pass. And so you would go to 2026, and then that way again, it'll go 24, 26, 28, 30. So every 2 years, you will have an election with this change and avoid those larger gaps in between. And again, it'll be that 3-2, 3-2 cycle discussed a moment ago. So that's how this is contemplated to work. Happy to answer any questions.
Council. I will say that it makes perfect sense as long as you don't explain it to us.
I mean, listen, I will tell you, as convoluted as that may have seemed, your poor city manager sat in a conference room where I did this all on a dry erase board and figured it out. It is more involved, and that is at your request based on some of the feedback given last time. There's cleaner, simpler ways that just says 3 to 4, but then you don't think of the consequences of it, and it's cleaner, but it's not necessarily the result you want big picture.
All right, well, let's go to the citizens for comments on this particular ordinance 23-08. Any citizen comments? No?
You will be tested on your way out to make sure you understand.
Especially you, Mr. Kelly. All right, seeing there are no citizen comments, they are now closed. I'm going to need a motion to adopt ordinance 23-08.
So moved.
Motion made by Lloyd Roberts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Shirley. Mr. Roberts, you have the floor.
Thank you. So the other day I turned on the television, I have Spectrum, and so it defaults to Bay News 9. And then I'm immediately going to change it to the station I really wanted to watch. And as Bay News 9 came in, they said, we're not going to talk about the changes that the city of Tampa is now going through with the voting. So I said, oh, listen to this. They were doing exactly this. And the net of it really is they wanted to change their elections to be in November, which we're going to talk about later, of the same years that we have the general election for our country and the midterms. They wanted to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's going to save them a lot of money by doing it just those times. I won't bore you with the detail on that, but more importantly was the turnout. There were statistics that said when we have elections the same time as the general election, they had like a 65% turnout. The elections that were not tied to either the general election or the midterms, they had like a 17% turnout. And I think that makes sense. People come out for those larger elections. So that's really what we're trying to do here, is to try to get our elections tied in the November election of even years just for that. So in order to do that, this is one of those things that need to be changed. We're on a 4-year term. If we're on a 3-year term, obviously you're only going to be on odd numbers. Even if you start the first year on an even number, 3 years later, you're automatically in an odd then you go back to an even, doesn't work. So that's the main reason we want to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts, for totally ignoring Mr. Moore on sticking to the topic, but I felt the same way that these two had to be joined. For it to make sense. Why would we want to, extend the terms? Why do we want every 2 years? Specifically so that we can line up with the presidential and midterm elections. Any other comments or questions from the council on this one? No? All right. Patty, can we take a roll call, please?
Councilmember Banker. No. Councilmember Livingstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro. No. Councilmember Roberts.
Yes,
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Aye.
Mayor Gaddis.
Aye. And so first reading passes 4-2, ordinance 2308. And Mr. Moore, do you have something to add about that one?
Not about that one, but I'm prepared to add to 2309. The Ordinance 2309 is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, submitting to the city electors a referendum question on the amendment of section 5.05 of the charter to adjust the regular election cycle from March to November, contingent on the passage of a separate ballot measure governing the duration of council member terms, identifying the issue to appear on said ballot, providing for the adoption of ballot language by resolution, providing for publication in accordance with the law, and providing for an effective date. This has been a reading of ordinance number 23-09 by title only. As I've done with the two previous, I'd read the ballot language, proposed ballot language here that will be before you next meeting. Charter Amendment number 4, conditionally aligning local election cycle with federal election cycle in November. If a majority of the city's electors approve an amendment extending council member terms to 4 years, shall the city also amend the charter to provide that its regular local elections for council members shall be held in November in general alignment with the federal election cycles, as opposed to the existing requirement that regular local elections occur in March. Yes to amend the provision, no to retain. I appreciate your admonition to Mr. Roberts. I will tell you that as in drafting these, there was a challenge in understanding that the way that you folks had talked about this, these were linked. One of the explicit directions I was given at our work session was, we don't really care about having our elections in November if we can't get our election cycles changed in a way to these even numbered 4-year terms, such that we could stay on that same November cycle. But when I asked, do you want it to work both ways? The answer was no, we don't want them to be each contingent, just contingent one way. And so that's how this was written. It is very, I think, clear to the voters that number 4 is conditional on the passage of number 3. If number 3 fails, number 4 is going to fail no matter what the vote is. But it still needs to have a passing vote to be approved. And so other than that, in terms of the body of 2309, you can see 5.0, the language in 5.05 says beginning with the regular election to be held in 2026. So it would be very, very clear that beginning with the regular election to be held in 2026 on the Tuesday next after the first Monday in November, then this would happen. I can write this like that because we're only doing this if we move to 4 years. So we already know in the 4-year ordinance, or the 4-year ballot language, we are extending the terms of a few seats so that they would extend all the way into November 2026 or into 2026. I know it's a little convoluted. I'm sorry. It's the only way you can make all of that work. But basically, if the voters approve the 4-year term and they approve this, then the first time you have an election, then the very next election after the March 2024 election will be in November 2026.
Right.
That will be the gap. You'll jump no March 2025, no November 2025, no March 2026. November 2026 will be your next election where they to approve everything. And so the people elected in 2024 will serve till 2028, and the people elected in 2026 will serve until 2030 and every 4 years thereafter, if it is approved by this council and the voters.
Thank you for explaining that, Mr. Moore. Let's go to the citizens for comments. Any citizen like to make a comment? No? All right, citizen comments are now closed. I need a motion to adopt ordinance 23-09.
So moved.
Motion made by Lloyd Roberts. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Shirley. Mr. Roberts, once again, you have the floor.
Yeah, I think I cheated last time, kind of already talked about this somewhat, so pretty self-explanatory. We just want to get on the 4-year cycle. And that's why we want to do that.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right, Patty, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bankard,
No.
Councilmember Livingstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro. Yes. Councilmember Roberts,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Aye.
Mayor Gaddis.
Aye, so ordinance 23-09, first reading is approved. The vote was 5-1. Right now, we are on to item number 14, consideration of ordinance 23-10. This is first reading. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance 23-10, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, amending section 38-87 of the city's code of ordinances governing the permitting process for special events, associated costs and fees, and potential penalties for unpermitted or non-compliant special events, providing for the implementation of administrative actions, providing for codification, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. There's been a reading of ordinance 23-10 by title only on first reading, Mr. Mayor. We workshopped this about 2 weeks ago. This is the ordinance that was in part the product of some concerns raised by activist organizations and members of the community concerning special event permitting. And this is the ordinance done in collaboration with that organization to reach a better product for the community and its code.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Let's go to the citizens for comments. Crickets. All right, citizen comments are now closed. Before we continue, we're going to need a motion to adopt ordinance 23-10. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Shirley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Roberts. Vice Mayor Shirley, you have the floor.
I think we workshopped this pretty well, and it's been an ongoing work in progress trying to fix an ordinance that was loosely assembled years ago. Mr. Moore did a great job pulling it together and working with the outside agency that brought it to our attention, and I think it's something we should move on.
I agree. It was a great collaborative. I guess authoring of this ordinance. It was something we had to do. Otherwise, it could very well be challenged, and the last thing we want to do is wind up in court. So because of this entire process, we now have, as Mr. Moore says, a better product in our code of ordinances when dealing with events. Any other comments? No? All right, Patty, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Bankard.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Livingstone.
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro. Yes. Councilmember Roberts.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Aye.
Mayor Gaddis.
Aye, and so ordinance 23-10, first reading is approved unanimously. All right. Now let's go to item number 15, which is consideration of ordinance 23-05, which will be the second and final reading. Mr. Moore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance 23-05, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, amending chapter 18, section 18-5 of the city's code of ordinances entitled Time for Qualifying, removing the specified qualifying period, providing for the establishment of the qualifying period by resolution of the City Council, providing for the incorporation of recitals, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. This has been a second and final reading of ordinance 23-05 by title only.
Mr. Mayor, before we go to citizen comments, would you please give a summary as to why this ordinance was created?
Yes, happily, Mr. Mayor. So your code presently provides that no person shall qualify as a candidate in any regular city election prior to 8 a.m. on the 88th day preceding the next regular election, or later than 12 noon on the 81st day. It's a very fixed set period. It is inflexible. There's not really a lot of leeway to change that as it's written. And so as if you apply that to the March 2024 election, for example, it would fall past the deadline that the city needs to notify the supervisor of elections of the ballot language and qualified candidates. And it would also span the Christmas holiday such that and a weekend such that there would really be 2 or 3 business days during which somebody could qualify, which would present challenges to candidates interested in the position. And so in order to rectify that, what we've done is change that language to just say, we'll do a resolution. This is very common in other communities to set the qualifying period by resolution, which you only do on 1 reading. That resolution is in our materials tonight, and we'll be reading and addressing that in a moment. But that's why this was written and addressing your election code.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Let's go to the citizens for comments. Would anyone like to comment on ordinance 23-05? All right, citizen comments are now closed. I'm going to need a motion to adopt ordinance 23-05. Again, this is the second and final reading. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Shirley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Roberts. All right, Vice Mayor Shirley, you have the floor.
I have nothing more to add. It's got a pretty good explanation of what we're voting on here.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment on this ordinance? No. All right, Patty, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Banker.
Yes.
Councilmember Livingstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro. Yes. Councilmember Roberts,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Aye.
Mayor Gladys.
Aye, and so ordinance 23-05 is approved and adopted. Thank you, everyone, for getting that one done. All right. Hey, we've made it to the regular agenda. Item number 16, consideration of applicants to fill vacant city council seats. Tonight, we have 2 candidates. The first is Mark Chester, and the second is Michael Hayward. Tell you what, let's do it this way. Before we go to citizen comments or anything like that, is Mr. Chester here, and would you like to introduce yourself to the council?
And here,
Please come up to the podium. Give us your full name and address.
hi, Mayor and council members. I am Mark Chester and I am a resident here in Bel Air Beach. My address is 429 22nd Street. And we've been living here for 4 years. Or so my wife tells me.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, yeah. I put myself out here once before and I never really thought of doing something like this 3 or 4 years ago. But I really love our community and I am willing to do whatever I can to help our little community stay like it is and run smoothly, efficiently. And, I'm willing to do that. I enjoy being retired and being critical of how football games go, the way I would do it if I was coaching. But if I do something, I really put myself into it and am willing to put in the time and effort that is necessary to do the very best that I possibly can.
Thank you, Mr. Chester. Don't sit down just yet. Would any council members like to ask a question of Mr. Chester? No? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Mr. Hayward. Would you like to introduce yourself to the council?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, city council members and city officials. My name is Michael Hayward. I'm a resident. I live on Hibiscus Drive East. I've been a resident here for 31 years, so I grew up with the city pretty much. It's all I ever know. I moved away for college and grad school. I lived a couple years in Japan teaching English, but that was it. And I've been back here ever since. In college, I studied political science, so I know how local government works. I took coursework in local government. In high school, I was part of Boys State, so I was chosen to go to Tallahassee to work on local government issues as well. And for grad school, I studied international relations in DC, and I worked for the State Department. So I know how even federal government works, and I've been in multiple high-level meetings throughout the government. And I came home because my mother got sick, and then I stayed with her and helped her out. And after she passed, I just got comfortable here again because it's home. And I've been home ever since that. And I think it's the opportunity presented itself, and I want to take part and give back to my community.
Thank you, Mr. Hayward. Do we have any questions from the council for Mr. Hayward? No? All right, thank you so much.
Wait, I do have a question. Are you working now? Because I'm trying to I'm looking at your resume and I'm not seeing that.
I work for a movie production company right now. I run movie productions, but
Okay.
it's not set, so it's whenever the opportunity
You have
arises.
some flexibility in your
Yes,
schedule. Okay, all
Yep.
right, great, thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayward. All right, let's go to the citizens for public comments. Would anyone like to speak on behalf of either of these candidates? All right, citizen comments are closed. All right, before we can move forward with voting, I'm going to need a motion to fill our currently vacant council seat. Do I have a motion? Motion made by Frank Bankard. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lord Roberts. Mr. Bankard, you have the floor.
I think we got two good candidates here. Let's vote.
Everybody good with that? All right, let's move forward. Patty? Let's see, we all have our ballots now, right? Okay. All right, so you can only select one candidate. So let's go to it. I'm sorry. You gotta get taller.
Thank you. While she's collecting those, I would like to make a comment. Frank already said it. I think we have two very qualified candidates. It's always nice when we are in that situation. So I think shape here regardless of which candidate is selected. And I appreciate both of you guys for signing up for this. Thank you.
I am ready.
Councilmember Bankard voted for Michael Hayward. Oh, for heaven's sake. Councilmember Livingstone voted for Mark Chester. Councilmember Notaro voted for Mark Chester. Councilmember Roberts voted for Mark Chester. Vice Mayor Shirley voted for Mark Chester. Mayor Gallus voted for Mark Chester.
Thank you, Patty, and I'd like to thank both candidates for volunteering to serve our city. The winner is Mark Chester with 5 votes. And again, Mr. Hayward, I appreciate you stepping up, and please consider applying for any of our boards or committees as they come available. Now, welcome to our council, Mr. Chester. Patty, would you like to swear Mr. Chester in?
Sure.
Solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support, honor, protect, and defend
that I will support, honor, protect, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution and government of the United States
and the state of Florida,
and of the state of Florida,
that I am duly qualified to hold office
that I am duly qualified to hold office
under the Constitution of the state
under the Constitution of the state
and under the charter of the city of Bella Beach,
and under the charter of the city of Bel Beach,
and that I will well and faithfully perform
that I will well and faithfully perform
the duties
the duties of council member
which I am now about to enter.
on which I am now allowed to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. Okay. Okay, she's the square director.
Name tag.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you so
And for Mr. Mayor, just for clarity in the record going forward, congratulations, Mr. Chester, on being appointed. Your term will run through the March 2024 election, at which point the seat will be up for regular election. And we'll address that in the resolution as well.
That's next.
Yes.
Okay, okay, great. All right, well, let's get to the first official order of business for Mr. Chester. This is item number 17. It's consideration of resolution 2023-10. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution 2023-10, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, calling for a general election to be held on March 19th, 2024, for the purpose of electing 3 city council members for a full term of office and a 4th seat for the remaining tenure of a recently vacated council member position, to establish the qualifying date and process for persons seeking elective office for the 2024 municipal election, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the supervisor of elections, establishing a polling place for the March election, authorizing Pinellas County supervisor of elections to verify candidate petition cards and facilitate the election process, and establishing an effective date. This has been a reading of resolution 2023-10 by title only. This is a single reading as it is a resolution. The resolution in large part is administrative. It is to document for our purposes and with the supervisor of elections what we are calling for. You have 3 seats whose regular cycle is scheduled to be on the March 2024 ballot. I don't think there's any real controversy or question there. There was some discussion about what happens with members Abel's seat. And the language in your charter as it reads contemplates that the person appointed by the council upon a vacancy shall serve until the next regular election. Our next regular election is scheduled to be held in March 2024. What will happen is that election for that seat will do nothing to change the cycle that seat is on. What it will do is whoever is elected in March 2024 to the seat vacated by member Zabel will serve for the remainder of that term. Ordinarily, I would tell you, they will serve until March 2025. When they will serve until is in part a function of how all these charter amendments function. Because if those terms are extended through November 2026, then that may change that calculus. However, they will serve for the remainder of the natural term of Councilmember Zabel's office upon the March election. How are we going to do that was a question we had at the last work session, and that's provided for in the resolution in section 4 sub A and sub B. And the way that it reads basically is the assuming you get 4 people who run, the 3 people, and as I view this, we may have to address this. Assuming you get 5 people to run, the 3 people who get the most votes will get the regular seats. The 4th person will get 4th place will get that shorter term. That's how that's designed to function. As I review the resolution, I'm realizing that it doesn't address what would happen if in the event you don't have a full, if only 4 people run, how will that be decided? That could be construed as a tie that would be resolved by your charter's language on, drawing lots and straws and the like. And I may, in speaking with the clerk and manager, wish to do another resolution in November to clarify that. But assuming you have 5 people such that you're having an election and a contested election, the top 4 vote getters would fill those seats. 1st place, 2nd place, 3rd place, if you will, would take the ordinary seats. 4th place would fill Councilmember Chester's seat. And Councilmember Chester, you are fully eligible, provided you remain a qualified elector of the city. You are fully eligible to run again in earnest to run for the position in March.
Thank you for clearing that up for us.
Yeah.
Let's go to the citizens for comments. No? All right. Citizen comments are now closed. Before we continue, I'm going to need a motion to approve resolution 2023-10.
Motion.
Discussion
Yeah, can we have a question?
or after the motion, discussion?
The discussion always happens after the motion.
Okay.
I'll move.
You did the first one?
I'll move it.
Okay. Leslie Natero, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Frank Bankert. Ms. Natero, you have the floor.
I think that this resolution is very clear. Section 3, where he talks about the 3 vacancies, and then the other one gets the rest of Mr. Zabel's term. I think it's clear and it makes sense.
And as I was talking about it as an aside with the city manager a moment ago, one of the suggestions he had was if we have 4 people qualify, we can still just run the election just to see functionally who's getting that 4th seat. That's one approach we could do. Or to save on the election, we would have to address how that would be resolved without the need for one. Mea culpa that I didn't address that here in the various ordinances on elections. That was an oversight that we can still address. I would appreciate your insights on that. If you would prefer that you run the election if there are only 4 people. If you have less than 4 people run, then those 2 or 3 would get full terms. But at 4, do you want to run an election, or would you have that rather resolved by lots on who gets the short straw and therefore the short term?
Yeah, I would say that if we only had 4 candidates, the first question would be to go to each candidate and see if anyone would consider doing the short term. And then that would save us from having to at least have that ballot language in. But we have other ballot language anyway. So I don't know if there'd be any.
You're running an election regardless, for sure.
Have we always treated the replacement? I don't recall. They always in the past, and maybe it's just been handled wrong. But when we had to replace someone on council, they stayed on through that term, through that person's term.
That may be the case. Candidly, I didn't go through the entire history of it, in part because all of that is fact intensive. For example, Member Livingstone was appointed in June of last year. It feels like she's just served a longer time than Member Chester might get to, but it's really just a function of when Member Gunn's seat is up in March. Whether or not it was done in the past, to me, doesn't doesn't command the result. To me, I looked to the plain language of your charter. I reviewed that with my fellow charter officials. Candidly, I reviewed it with my colleagues as well to say, am I missing something here? And the unanimous consensus of reviewing the language of your charter as it reads is that they are appointed and serve until the next regular election. And nothing, and the rest of the charter specifically dictates the cycles that seats are up for election. So that would run counter to other language, and you have to read a document like that in harmony with all its terms. So that's how I got to that result. I can't tell you that it was never done the other way. Had I been your city attorney at the time, I don't think I would have interpreted it that way.
In the way that I see this, at first I didn't agree with you at all. And then I realized that really we're not flipping the cycle. What we're doing is if you have an elected official who resigns early in his term, you're not actually, you're giving the council to speak on behalf of the citizens. There's still a whole greater than 50% of a term that we should take it to the citizens to allow to vote for. But if it were less than half the term, then I would, then this is the case of like Mark Chester here.
I don't know that it's really about how much is left in the term as much as it is, are you having another election again? On a regular cycle, not a special election. Are you having another regular election? If so, the documents of your charter and the spirit of the representative democracy that we have say, well, then let the voters weigh in. You're having an election anyways. You guys filled the seat as a stopgap measure so that we could continue to do business with the full complement of 7 members and avoid 3-3 ties and the like where we didn't need them. But now the voters are going to be weighing in on 3 other seats. Why not just have them place everybody? I think is really more the thrust of it. It's not if he had been in his last year, but we're having a regular election, same result. And that is what's happening. Member Zabel's seat would have been, forgetting all the charter amendments, would have been up in March 2025. It's 1 year left in the term on its ordinary cycle. So it's not really about how much is left in the term as much as the seat was vacated before a next regular election. Had Member Zabel resigned in April 2025, whoever filled that seat, whether it was Member Chet, in April of 2024, that person would serve 11 months. And they would never come up for election because there's no regular election between that and the end of the term. So that's the only reason where time comes in if you're less than a year left, because you don't have a regular election.
Or if it's after the qualifying period, then
Yeah.
obviously they stay.
Well, yes, that would be another issue. Yeah. So if you can't qualify in time. So that's why this is working this way. My one request of you as we look at this resolution would be, I'd appreciate consensus on how you want to handle. If you have exactly 4 members qualify, how would you like that handled? That's again, my shortcoming in drafting this, that it's not drafted, but it's not in there. But I would appreciate council insight on what you'd like to see in that instance. I've heard Mayor Gaddis's recommendation that you see if we can't get somebody to volunteer for the shorter term. But is that the will of the body, or at least the consensus of the body?
Comments? Yes.
So I think it's clear that if we have 5 or more candidates for the March election, then we definitely will have an election.
Yes, sir.
That's clear. If we have 4 or less, but if we have 4 exactly, even though it may cost, it will cost money to have an election. I guess my gut feel is it makes sense to go ahead and do that for the sole purpose of knowing what our citizens, how they voted. So who was 1, 2, 3, and 4. And as you stated earlier, whoever comes out to be 4th out of the 4 would take Mr. Zabel's seat.
Right. And understand you are having an election for the, based on, at least at this point, you have first reading. I won't presume second reading
Right.
passes, but should it pass in the same manner, then you will have issue elections on the ballot at the very least.
Interesting.
Any other comments? No, all right.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I don't mean to interrupt your presiding officer. I'm looking for consensus direction. One of the challenges I had in drafting the charter amendments was I wanted consensus direction. I had one or two of you speak to it. It'd be really helpful to get the views of those members who have not spoken.
You'd like this answered now.
It would be most helpful. Yes, I would.
We can do that. Okay, well, let's start with Mark Chester.
Well, I will tell you this, there's a big difference between serving a year and a half as opposed to 5 months.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not sure I agree with you on the filling. We've had this happen before in our country where they appointed somebody president after they resigned and they didn't have an earlier election. They filled out the term. So,
Yes, and I would say those were bound by different documents.
yeah, no, so I'm just, you might have had more people participate in this if it wasn't for only 5 months, as opposed to fill the entire term. That's my 2 cents.
I hear that, understanding that we're here now, if 4 people qualify, how would you like that resolved in terms of, would you prefer that we resolve that internally, meaning draw lots or straws or something to see who's full place? Or do you think in the instance where there are 4 qualified candidates that should be submitted to the elector?
I always like for the people to be able to vote on things. I'm also in favor of saving money and not wasting money whenever that's possible. So.
Okay.
You're putting a lot of pressure on somebody who just got up here.
Well, left or right, I don't know, like the left. Leslie, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yeah, as far as saving money by if we only have 4 people qualified, we're gonna have to have the election anyway because of the amendments to the charter.
Awesome.
So having another question on there is not going to be that significant, having the council member election on there.
So is that, you would prefer the vote in that instance?
Pardon?
So is that you saying you, in an instance where 4 people qualify, you think a vote would be more appropriate? As
Yeah,
a solution?
have the election,
Thank you.
put them on the ballot.
I would say, yes, put them on the ballot, but it still shakes out to how do we determine who gets what seat, right? So
It's
then,
whoever gets the least out of those 4, whoever gets the lowest number gets the 1-year term. Or what would ordinarily be the 1-year term, the shortest term.
we don't have any other option, right? I mean, you have to put them on the ballot. What else are you gonna do?
The other option is to treat it as a 4-way tie. And in your code, a tie is resolved as evidenced here by drawing lots or something else. So if you treat it as you can treat it as a tie, or you can submit it to the voters. If you treat it as a tie, we would draw lots or straws or something.
And that's assuming we don't end up reducing the council. That vote passes in March 2 to reduce the council to 5, then you're gonna have.
That
to-
that doesn't impact this cycle, though.
Okay, it'll be, so that vote it's not retroactive. I mean, it doesn't happen at the same vote.
No, the cycle down to 5 happens at the conclusion of that seat's term, that 4th seat's term. So they would serve that remaining period, and then at the end of that, there's 2 less council positions. Yeah.
Got it, okay. Yes, 4.
Mr. Bennington,
I think the charter is pretty clear on how to do this. I want to stick with it. You're all
Stick with it, treat it as a tie, and then, yeah, understood.
Ms. Livingstone,
I think Councilmember Notaro summarized it pretty well, and I'm in agreement with having an election. It makes sense.
Mr. Roberts,
So one scenario that we didn't really talk about yet. So let's say, for example, we have 4 spots and we only have 3 people that actually register. So then all 3 of them. When, what do we, I'm just curious.
And we would appoint the vacancy. thereafter.
We would appoint a vacancy.
Yep.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so I'm in favor of the votes. People will be voting on the charter items anyway, so that makes sense to me.
I'm still, I'm in the mindset that if we have 4 candidates, that anyone who is interested in a short term, sort of a trial size, they should be given that opportunity. And then the other 3 would do a full term, and then you don't even have to have the names on the ballot. It would cure itself.
Understood. I think I have my consensus direction. I will, of course, look at this particular aspect of this. Member Banker, your point on the charter is well taken. It could be treated as a tie. Much as you would, you would treat it as they have all voted for themselves and it's a 4-way tie. That would be the result absent some direction. If for some reason in reviewing that, my analysis changes because this was an on-the-fly issue I spotted, I will let you know.
Okay.
We still need to vote on the resolution, Mayor.
All right. So we are voting on resolution 2023-10
As written. Yes,
as
sir.
written.
And you already have your motion in your second.
Patty, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Banker,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
thank you. Councilmember Chester,
Yes.
Councilmember Livingstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro. Yes. Councilmember Roberts,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shirley. Aye. Mayor Gaddis.
Aye. So resolution 2023-10 passes unanimously. And we'll move forward with that as written. All right, we are on to item number 19, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business we would like to discuss?
Wait.
18. We got 18.
Resident city manager,
I lost the page. 1 second.
right here.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. Okay. That's funny. Authorize the city manager to grant easements to Duke Energy Florida LLC. Before we go to the council for comments and a vote on this, would the citizens like to speak? No citizen comments. Citizen comments are closed. All right, this is placed on the agenda by City Manager Riefler. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is an item we discussed in the last work session. This is an easement at Crossman Park. Duke is requesting to place switchgear equipments that have to do with the undergrounding of the Gulf Boulevard on the eastern side. Like I mentioned before, the idea when designing this project was to try to keep all the equipment as much as possible off private property. In some instances, it was unavoidable, and residents have cooperated and given easements to Duke Energy to make this project go. This is an opportunity where the switchgear can be placed on the public land of Crossman Park, and it's a city's decision to allow that easement for the purpose of the undergrounding project. I've included the easement itself, the map of where the 2 switchgear will be placed in Crossman Park, which is going to be the northwest part of the parcel. And also they gave us a sort of a rendering of what the equipment would look like in the park.
Thank you, Mr. Riefler. Before we move forward on this, I'm going to need a motion to authorize the city manager to grant easements to Duke Energy Florida LLC. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion made by Frank Baker. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second by Vice Mayor Shirley. Mr. Baker, you have the floor.
Those 2 boxes, junction boxes to the left, are they gonna be removed?
No, those remain, that's communication.
All communication? Both of them?
The one looks like it is power.
The little one should be
Yeah, the
communication.
little one's communication. And the in-ground box is communication as well. It's
Okay.
in front of it. Let me get clarification on the little small electrical box.
That's all.
Any other,
Kyle, I have a question. It looks like the house on the corner, on the opposite corner has a box or something going in there. I'm gonna assume that easement's already been granted, but I realized today they're digging footers for a wall there. Has that been taken into consideration?
Yes, that wall has been taken into consideration the entire project. It was actually, as you know, that it was trenched and left over for quite some time. It's because it's a unique piece of property where our usual rules in our ordinances for walls don't apply because it's completely the county's right away with their line of sight for their intersection. So they did get involved after we approved it per our code. And then they've actually had to back the wall off of the property line closer to the house itself and reduce the height of the wall because of the intersection.
But Duke's been part of this process.
Duke's been
is
a
my
part of
question,
this
because
entire
the
process.
footers are huge. I mean, as they should be for a block wall. And I just noticed that them digging them this morning, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they're fully aware.
Okay,
I was shocked that a single person was out there digging that trench.
by hand.
Female,
Really?
it was a female.
Wow. Okay. Any other questions or comments on this topic? No? All right, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Any opposed? All right, you are authorized.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, now let's move to item 19, unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? Nope. All right, I think everyone's probably getting ready to go.
Mayor. Yeah. I didn't get this in on the city manager report. I just want to mention that Officer Klapka did point out that the sergeant was called into emergency that was supposed to be here to do the report. So it was actually a situation where a lot of officers were needed.
Good. I mean, not good, but you know what I'm saying. At least we have an excuse. Okay. All right, well, in that case, let's just move on to item 20, council comments. You know what, Mark, I'm going to skip you this time. I'll come back to you next to last. All right. All right, so up next is Council Member Roberts.
Thank you, man. Again, I want to, I came in, I think, a week ago and was talking to Patty about some other issue. And that's when she told me about her news. And it sort of just took the breath out of me for a moment that she's going to be retiring. So I wish her nothing but the best. I know she's going to spend a lot of time with her grandchildren. She informed me, so I know you'll enjoy that. So have fun with it. You're welcome. One quick question to the city manager, which is, have we had any candidates express interest in the maintenance worker position?
Yes, Community Services Administrator Aaron Glanz has been interviewing. I think he's done 4 up to this point.
Oh, awesome.
So yes, we've had interest and I know he's really looking at them all because he's trying to find that perfect fit
Great.
for our team.
Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Up next is Councilmember Matero.
No comments.
No comment. Mr. Bankard.
Just a couple, about 2 weeks ago, I don't know how many people got knocked on their door by FEMA on a Sunday, asking if there was any flood damage. My first question to the federal official was, what's the NFIP insurance lawsuit going on? Huh? Typical government response. Didn't know anything I was talking about. I tried to talk to the Attorney General because she's part of this, still in limbo. So I don't know, most people flood insurances are probably paid this year. Going forward, I don't know where this is going to go. Senator Scott's office is still working on it. Patty, you've been a jewel to the city. I am going to miss you deeply. I think this whole city owes you salute. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bankard. Up next is Councilmember Livingstone.
Well, I was very surprised as well to hear about Patty's retirement. Patty, I wish you the best, and I know we have a month left together, so we're going to hopefully spoil her rotten as she well deserves. So we are gonna miss you tremendously, but glad that you get to spend time with your family. Mr. Hayward, appreciate you applying. Please consider, like Mayor Gaddis said, consider some of the other appointments within the city. I think that you'll find that you'll get to know the council more and there'll be lots of opportunities. So please consider that. You were an excellent candidate. So thank you for applying.
Thank you, Ms. Livingstone. All right, up next is Councilmember Chester.
I'm just briefly, Patty, I'm not big on coincidences, but I hope my joining the team doesn't have any bearing on why you're bailing out. I do hope you enjoy your time with your grandchildren. Just, you may find that you have a little less and less as with them as you spend more time with them, because yeah, kids are a joy, and it's fun to stir it up and then leave it to the parents. So grandparents. So it's I'm sorry I won't get the chance to work with you for very long, but you've been really wonderful anytime I've had to come in and ask any questions about anything. So I appreciate your years of service. Enjoy retirement. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Chester. Up next is Vice Mayor Shirley.
I just want to thank both Mr. Chester and Mr. Hayward for stepping up. We really have people step forward, so we really appreciate your considering taking a position. And there are always positions available. You might get with Patty because she may have some openings right now, but that and council changes often. So certainly stay in the loop. Thank you very much, and I appreciate both of our candidates. And, you know, when Patty called me with her phone call, the first thing I said was, well, I'm not happy about you retiring. And then I had to rethink that and said, well, I'm glad you're retiring, but you will definitely be missed. And, you know, I know we have another month of time with you and, you know, look forward to spending some more time with you, but enjoy it. And thanks for everything you've done. I know you've been here almost as long as I have, so it's really nice to have that longevity in a city position. We've had a lot of turnover over the years, so it's just nice to see the same face every day. So hopefully we can find another person that will stay as long as you did. Do we have anyone in the office that might have an interest in a clerk position, or?
I'm not aware of any at this
Oh.
point, but we do have some prospects that we're looking to
Okay.
hopefully pull in.
Good. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Shirley. All right, this is normally the time whenever I get on my stump about beach nourishment. I think while things are going all right, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut on that. Also, Patty, I echo all the sentiments that you've heard tonight. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to work with you, and I really do. I hope you are able to enjoy your retirement and spend time with those grandkids. That's all I have for tonight. If anyone would like to make a motion to adjourn, I would entertain that. Mr. Banker, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, good night, everyone.
We've got a workshop. We've got another meeting in 2 weeks.